Science projects put Wesley to sleep. Guinan has had multiple husbands, and Jack Crusher taught baseball to his son, Wesley. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 1. We finally did it. We are in Season 3. The episode is entitled Evolution, story by Michael Piller and Michael Wagner, teleplay by Michael Piller. This is directed by Weinrich Colby. This was September 23rd, 1989. Where were you and your Oakleys? We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.
What's up, everybody? I'm Cirroc Lofton from the Seventh Rule podcast, and I'll be at STSF this year in the Bay Area, celebrating with our friends at Creation.
Okay. Cirroc's also from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You might recognize him from that. And my name is Ryan T. Husk of The Seventh Rule. You've got to go to this convention. It's March 8th through 10th, just south of San Francisco in Burlingame, right by the airport. You're going to love it. There are already well over 20 Star Trek and sci-fi guests, tons of panels. This is March 8th through 10th. Creationent.com. That's creationent.com to get tickets and to get your hotel. We can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, I'll be there. Ryan will be there, and we'll represent the Seventh Rule podcast.
And Star Trek Deep Space Nine. How you doing today, Cirroc?
Oakley's, huh? That's when they were popping, 1989. I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
Pretty darn good. I should get my hot pink fanny pack and really rock this episode out. Did you ever wear? Oh, you seem like the kind of guy who did have the cool sunglasses in '89 and '90.
I had at that time I had the replica ones that were being sold on the street, the fake Oakleys, But I did have a pair of the fake Oakleys,
That's cool.
and I remember the fanny packs and the parachute pants. I didn't wear much of those, but I did
Yeah,
have my
yeah.
own little style.
Fanny packs was always a funny thing because um, here in America, everybody knows fanny means your bun, but most people wore the fanny pack in front, which would be more conducive to what fanny means in England or in the UK. They're like, see, that's the real fanny pack. If it's in the back, that's not. Anyway, so let's talk about this episode. Everybody, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. And leave us a nice review. If it's a fun one, we will read it in the episode, and that's always cool. Remember, if you're watching, you can find the Seventh Rule wherever podcasts are found, and you can find the Seventh Rule 2 wherever podcasts are found. The Seventh Rule 2 covers all new Star Trek series. So check out the Seventh Rule and the number 2. All right. So, Cirroc, we finally did it. We're into season 3. I know for 2 seasons we've been saying, oh, don't worry. Wait, it's going to get so good. You just wait. Season 3, the bomb's
Yeah,
going to drop and you're going to be wowed. What do
yeah.
you think so far?
Not wowed yet. Not, not wowed yet. Um, no, wasn't there for me, the wow factor. Certain things that I did notice that I did like that were additions to the aesthetics, to the, I don't know, there was a sense of change in the feel a little bit to me of what I was seeing visually.
Totally.
Uh, had a different upgraded feel to it. I almost felt like I saw a lens flare at some
Ooh.
point in the beginning. Like it looked like a lens flare type effect with Geordi in the beginning of the episode. Uh,
Yeah, I noticed a ton of changes, but that I was specifically looking for them. They were a little bit more subtle. The first one being in like the second scene I noticed that Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge had an additional pip. He went from
Okay.
lieutenant junior grade in the first season to lieutenant in the first episode of the second season. Remember, Geordie and Worf both were bumped up to lieutenant. And there are a couple other changes. Then we also had Pulaski, a bunch of stuff in the first episode of the second season. Then in the
Yeah.
third season, you Geordie's saying something. You see there's a third pip on his neck. And we're like, damn, this guy is moving up gangbusters. And it got me thinking, is he the fastest rising officer that we've seen in Star Trek? I can only think of two others that really moved up that quickly. There was Kirk in the Kelvin movies. He went from like a cadet and to an acting captain or something. I didn't get it. It made no sense to me in the 2009 Star Trek movie. He just kind of jumped up and then was acting captain and then all kinds of weird stuff. And then there's Michael Burnham in Discovery that went from enlisted or special agent or something like that in the first season or two, and then became first officer and then became captain also very quickly. But Geordie's chief engineer. So it's good that his rank is really, progressing. He's gonna be captain next week.
I'm glad that whoever the powers that be made that adjustment, because when you look at it, and without, now that you've explained that to me, this man is responsible for pretty much the entire engine and electronic systems inside of the ship. And so anything going wrong goes to him. And for him to have a junior grade type of ranking on the most premier class ship with the best of the best people serving on it, child prodigies, Picard, you've got Riker, who could obviously has been offered a captainship at another place, so they basically have two captains. It only makes sense that you would have one of the best, engineers assigned to that technologically advanced ship, right? I'm sure it has certain elements of it that are on the cusp of whatever the Federation's
It is
technology is.
it is a flagship of the
Right.
fleet. Yes, it is
Yeah. So you would
officially.
have, that's like, having your back end mechanic, the guy who just does the oil changes, working on the warp drive. I want the top guy whose
He's
name is
not
on
touching
the
my warp
building.
drive.
That's what I'm saying. I need your top guy to look at this. This isn't just a small problem right here. So protect your warp drive. But yeah, I definitely think it makes sense, and that's just probably one of the structural things that comprehensively when Michael Piller is looking at this show, saying, okay, what are the things that make sense and what are the things that don't make sense? So that was one of the elements I picked up on right away, is that there were elements that changed. For example, the emphasis on family
Yep.
was stronger in this episode than I think I can remember ever since, right? So Michael Piller comes in again and says, okay, the dynamic of family, the mother son issue, I'm going to focus in on that with Wesley and Dr. Crusher, obviously bringing Dr. Crusher back and addressing that elephant in the room right away, making it actually a point of contention. These are kinds of things that I think show Michael Piller's writing style. He wants to make this show about family, about relationships, about conversations, and he wants to call out the obvious things that are out there. Like there's a way of calling out obvious things that he does in this script that we don't see before. For example, the way Dr. Paul Stubbs says to Troy, "Hey, I don't want to be analyzed right now. Turn your X-ray vision off," or whatever he
That was
calls it.
great. That was fun.
Right? I loved it, and it's a little bit of conflict, but it's also you know a way to talk about people's skill sets in a different, by addressing it right away and calling out elephants in the room.
Hmm. Yeah, The other thing, and yeah, Beverly Crusher, definitely got to talk about that because, for me, I'm always kind of jumping the gun on these little things that you notice, little an extra pip here, but really the bigger things to notice was first thing was wow, very vibrant exterior colors. Like just when showing the ship exterior and the planet, it looks amazing now. A lot of that has to be the remastering. Of course, that's the
Yeah,
remastering of Next
yeah,
Generation. It was very noticeable, but it does make you wonder how vibrant the colors were back in 89. And remember, 89 did love the fluorescent colors and the vibrance. So there might have been like kind of a revamping of, the lighting and the colors. But the other thing is, by the way, everybody, if you want that awesome isolinear chip shirt that Cirroc Lofton is wearing, you could get that at our Teespring store. Just click the link below. It'll say Spring, the seventh rule. Click on that, get your very own isolinear chip seventh rule shirt that has Aaron Eisenberg's birthday hidden in there. See if you can find it. So the other thing was Beverly Crusher's back. It was kind of sad that they didn't say anything about Pulaski. Remember in the second season when Beverly was gone, they said she's gone. She got a promotion to Starfleet Medical. Great. So we know
yeah,
what happened to her. We're happy for her. It's great. They didn't give Pulaski that kind of love. They didn't say anything like, oh, now she's chief medical officer, nothing. They're just like, they don't even mention her. But I wanted to ask
yeah.
you, we kind of knew what to expect, that she would be back, Beverly Crusher. But if you didn't know that, it was such a great reveal in 1989 that he's talking to a lady with cropped hair, so you don't recognize her right away, at least if you don't know if that's going to be her. And then it turns around and there she is. Did you like that reveal? I thought it was cool.
Yeah, just yeah, I like the reveal. She had a different kind of hairstyle, I guess, in this season. Um, there's a level of intensity that she has, and I don't know, there's some kind of captivating thing when you see her. Gates has this thing that the camera picks up on when it, shows her, and I think she wears it very well. It's just like you're interested in knowing what's going on in behind that face, like the thoughts and when you see her, and
Yeah.
there's an intrigue. So, and also she's so stylish and slender and graceful, and the way she wears her coat, reminds me of, obviously of that time period for me growing up, seeing my mom wearing her collar up and having just a certain look to that style, like sleeves rolled up with a
That's
collar up type
true.
of look.
With the windbreakers.
Yeah, yeah. So it was just like the style. And so she has the futuristic version of that. She actually started the scene kind of holding the collar a little bit a few times while she was talking to Picard. And just the way she was clutching the collar, I thought to myself, she's using it as a, kind of a scene crutch, but some kind of prop, I guess you would say. And just the like I said, the gravitas, the way she has this kind of aura about her, it's very interesting. It came right back on right away. There was letting go of any kind of animosity that I think that there would have whatever would animosity that led to her not being on the show for that second season. However, contractually, they didn't reach an agreement or whatever personally was going on with her that she decided to step away during that second season. I didn't see a residual
Totally.
of that animosity or beef or whatever it was uh, reflected in her performance. She looked totally like, "Hey, I'm back," and it was almost like in the line when she tells Wesley, she's like, he's like, "You weren't there for me. Where were you this last year?" And she kind of stops, pauses, takes it in, and then she looks back at him and says, "But I'm here now." And that was what I felt about her performance. It was like, okay, but I'm here now. Like Yeah, I was gone. Yeah, there was problems there. And yeah, it may have caused the problem by not being around and having you now having a certain attachment to Dr. Pulaski, who's taken my place. But I'm here now, and I'm gonna own it. And I felt like that's what she did.
Yeah, it did seem like just a happy reunion. At least if it wasn't, they did a good job of making it seem like that. They gave her, the little musical cue, the nice um the nice reveal, the nice backstory, the fact that the episode centered on her. They weren't like, she's gonna have to work her way back up. We're gonna give her like, yes sir, no sir kind of boring ass roles with very little lines. They actually centered the first episode on her and her son and their relationship. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. You would think that if there was any residual effects, as you put it, they would kind of give her, background stories, at least for the first half season. But no, they went right into it. She did great. Wesley did great. It felt like it was just a happy remarriage there. Maybe it wasn't,
Yeah,
but that's what it looked like to the viewers, I would think.
it did. It did. The other thing I noticed right off the bat was, Wesley has grown up, and he's kind of went through this. He's either going through this, puberty time in his life that I remember going through myself. So I watched, for example, right away I noticed his voice was a couple octaves lower than it normally
Oh,
is.
really? He did look a little bit more adult, but you know what's
Yeah,
crazy though? There's only 2 months in between this first episode and the last episode of season two. Last episode of season two was July 15th, 89. This was September 23rd of 89 because that one, remember, got kind of pushed back. But he was not featured in the last episode or two, but he did look different and he sounded
yeah.
different. I didn't even notice he sounded different, but there was definitely a different feel. He seemed a little bit more adult. But yeah, I did kind of want to ask you, Cirroc, because the theme was 17-year-olds shouldn't be working all the time. They should be having fun. They should be getting into trouble. And there's that really fun line of, when Crusher says, to Picard, when you were 17, he's like, I was getting in a lot more trouble than this kid is. And she's like, me too. And then that made me think of you at 17. You're in the thick of things. You're in season 4 or 5 of Deep Space Nine. Was there any moments where you thought, I wish I was just fucking around a lot more? Just kind of jumping around, or was working fun enough to where you actually were able to enjoy yourself? Or was there like a good work-life balance to where you could have your fun and you could go to work? Or what was that like?
Yeah, 17. I mean, I thought I was messing around a lot. That's what I was doing a lot. I mean, um, I wasn't like staying orderly and just going to my trailer and reading and going to school and just I was in the beginning, but then I would find that I could carve out time for myself in other ways, which is what I used to go set hopping around the Paramount backlot. So I did get into my little what I considered trouble, which is what she's alluding to is a safe kind of trouble, a natural kind of progressive trouble of dating and hanging out with friends on stoops of apartment buildings or houses or whatever, and just talking until late night. But um, so I did a lot of that stuff. I, you know, I thought the scene between Wesley and Dr. Crusher, where she does confront him and he doesn't want to talk with her about certain things that he's going through.
Yeah.
She's like, well, just tell me, I can help you. I thought that was a very good scene, kind of indicative of those moments when, both from the kid perspective and from the adult now perspective where I'm at, where, there is that miniature conflict where it's like, I don't want to tell you, I'm going to make it hard for you or whatever, this conflict that happens between naturally at some point between parent and child. So I thought that was a well performed because he didn't seem mad or
Mm,
vengeful.
yeah.
It seemed like he was just more like, let me deal with this on my own, mom. I don't want your help. I got into this. I can get out of it. That kind of you know, stay out of my way type of mentality.
Yeah.
So that was normal.
Did you notice that he had his own quarters? They were talking about Wesley's quarters. I'm like, damn,
Yeah,
this guy's 17 and he gets his own place. Now remember, in a place without money,
yeah,
it's not like you say, all right, you get a job, you move out, you get your own place. It's like if money's not an issue, are kids moving out sooner? Are they like 13 and they're like, whenever they're just ready, they're like, hey, I'm going to put in a request for the captain for the quarters over there, and then the parents are like, okay, just make sure your quarters are kind of close to ours. And like, and then at what age? Or is it because at 16, his mom left, he got his own quarters, or maybe he got his old quarters, and then she moved back and they're like, close enough, get your own quarters. He's at practically 18, but I think that maybe some of it might just be if money's not an issue and the kid says, I want to live on my own at 14 or whatever, and the parents are okay with it, and the captain approves it, maybe they just say, okay, you're on your own, kid. Have fun.
yeah. There's a similar thing that they do in acting for young actors that want to become independent and don't want to have a guardian on the set. Those actors go through a process called emancipation, which is basically saying I'm an adult, and those young children get emancipated. And when they do, then they have forfeit the rights of a child, essentially, of guardianship in certain aspects, and try to find themselves um, in an adult position really early. I would say that Wesley's being kind of commissioned to be on the crew as part of, you know, the crew, that makes him eligible for quarters. You're saving the lives of the crew, you're problem solving, you're in the mix for a lot of this stuff. So to me, whatever a crew member would get, regardless of whatever their stature
Mhm.
is, whatever the basic level entry crew member quarters is, that he would be entitled to that at
He's
the
also
very least.
putting the lives of crew members at risk too, but we specifically in this episode.
Well, seriously, and that's the funny thing is, as soon as you give Wesley his own room, he
Yeah.
works on nanotechnology that could destroy the whole
And
thing.
just leaves
No,
the
I think,
jar open. What does that even mean? That's what you do with your science projects? You just kind of leave things open, you go to sleep. I also thought it was funny that like he gets up, first of all, he oversleeps, but then he gets up and then goes straight to work. I'd be like, bro, we'll wait 4 minutes, take a shower or, go pee, have breakfast. I don't know, but you don't need to like wake up and then go straight in and like start already flying the ship. I'd be like, get some coffee in you. Like, I don't want you do something. Take
yeah,
15, but you don't need to come straight from sleep to flying a starship with 1,000 people on it.
yeah, I have to agree with that. I also think that, you know, the fact that he's falling asleep with like basically this technology that could essentially destroy everybody. That is the level of mischief that Dr.
Yeah.
Crusher is actually talking about. So it's actually, that's the irony there, right? She's saying you need to step out and do something more adventurous, and he's like, "Well, Mom, I am kind of about to destroy the whole ship." So that's pretty adventurous.
Yeah,
So that,
experiments.
I think there's an irony there. Yeah, there's an irony there.
Yeah, really, your experiment shouldn't be jeopardizing the ship.
Yeah,
There's definitely a lot there as well. Hey, we got to jump
yeah.
to our quick break here. But when we get back, there's also a few other things that season three seemed to introduce. And we will talk about everything on the other side. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc frickin' Lofton.
Hello.
He is pumped about season three so far. I can tell. Here are the trivioids of the week. Science projects put Wesley to sleep. Wesley Crusher forgot to set his alarm clock. Dr. Paul Stubbs will attempt to study the decay of neutronium. Commander Riker points at Wesley Crusher for a long time. Beverly Crusher was at Starfleet Medical for a year. Captain Picard would feel inhibited if he were 17 and his mother was on board. There has not been a systems-wide technological failure on a starship in 79 years. Guinan has had multiple husbands. Wesley left a container of nanites open. Wesley has his own quarters. Wes and Dr. Frankenstein both always got A's. Jack Crusher taught baseball to his son. And why does a mosquito bite your ear? So, so here's something that was different. Another thing that was different, or that felt different to me, was Riker feeling more like Riker. Like the Riker that I remember, and the Picard that I remember, and the Worf that I remember don't really show up in seasons 1 and 2 as much. They're different in seasons 1 and 2 than how I remember those characters. Kind of all of them, except for Wes. And so one thing that Riker did, where I was like, oh my God, this is Riker now. This is the actual Riker, was when Wesley is showing up to the bridge late. They call him. They're like, hey, did your alarm call? He's, oh, yeah, wipes the drool from his face, and he shows up. When he walks onto the bridge, everybody watch this again. When he pops onto the bridge, Riker points at him with a Riker smirk. And it's not even Riker. It's Jonathan Frakes, right? He's pointing at him with a smirk of like, you little rascal. And he's got this deviant smile. And as Wesley's walking, his finger is just following him. He's just constant. He's just keeping that point all the way around while he's doing that with this smile. And I'm like, that is such a Jonathan Frakes doing that to a Will Wheaton. It didn't feel like Riker and Wesley. It felt like Frakes and Will Wheaton. And it felt like there was a genuine friendship between those two actors, that Frakes felt comfortable doing that, and that the director felt comfortable saying, that works, keep it. It was like, it was clearly a choice, and I liked it very much. And I watched it like 4 or 5 times because I was like, that feels like Frakes and Wheaton to me. And I loved it. I don't know if you saw that, because, there's a bunch of other things going on in that scene, but I loved it.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but it does sound like something I've heard before, which is how Jonathan Frakes acts like a director, right? So he thinks like a director, and that would be a director thing to do. Kind of, it helps the shot move along. It's one of those. It's
Yeah, yeah,
like helps the camera pan. It's all of those. It's all of the above. So um, that's Jonathan Frakes' director skills. But yes, I do feel like um, there was some changes in this. I felt like Counselor Deanna Troy's lipstick was extra red and like super bright, and I had never noticed that before. Was that the case this whole time?
I didn't quite notice
Yeah,
that specifically, but it's got to be under the everything else that we're seeing, which is just, it feels like they were just more vibrant colors, that they just
more
pop
colors.
more. They're just like,
Yes.
it felt like, in just 2 months, in just a 2 month summer, they said, all right, let's, we're under new leadership. They handed the reins over to Rick Berman, I believe, presumably. And he was just
I
like,
saw that.
more color, more vibrance. Um, the officers are more competent. The relationships are focused on more. And not just that, but I also felt like they addressed somewhat my concerns through season two of if Whoopi, or not Whoopi, Guinan is there being kind of like a counselor, then what the heck is Troy doing? They need to figure that out. And the suggestion is we'll make Troy more into diplomacy and ambassadorship and working with the captain. And that's what they did. You notice Whoopi was, or Guinan was, the friend that's telling stories, the wisdom of centuries. And Troy was working with the guest star, was working with the diplomacy, with the guy, the representative of the Federation. She didn't presumably need to ask the captain for permission to go visit this guy and talk to him. She is a lieutenant commander herself, and she's working on this case. And I thought that was a much better way to really delineate these two roles. So now it's two very different roles. And I thought that the way they used Troy was much better in this episode, or at least worked better for, differentiating between everybody's roles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I saw that difference. I also saw the color difference. I felt like they used different chairs in the conference room. It felt like those pinkish purplish chairs, which had the little roll in the back of the neck part. I felt like those are new and were different than previous years. So I think they upgraded those chairs.
Mm-hmm.
There was a shot of the wood grain banister that's in the on the bridge when Dr. Paul Stubbs gets knocked over from that violent shaking, which I thought was hilarious.
I know. I watched that. Like he runs into the wall and then does a secondary thing, and then they shake again, and he's still. I'm like,
and he starts flopping on the floor.
This guy's falling forever. Like, what is going on here? This guy's convulsing.
I mean, how do you fall on the floor? You've fallen already. It's
you can't fall on the floor twice. You're already there.
You're already there. He was convulsing at that point, like you said. This is like somebody get an EpiPen because this guy needs, he needs some help. But no, that made me laugh right off top when I saw him falling. But then there was a shot of him getting up, and as he's getting up from the floor, he's holding on to the bottom edge of that curved banister, that wooden banister. And I don't know if it was always wooden, but that was like the first time it actually got its own, like, that piece of wood. I felt like it was the first time it got a close up, in that shot, which was like, hey, you got some beautiful set right here. I know it's low and not really in the sight line of a lot of the close ups and, of it's in the wide shots, but you don't get an opportunity to look down at the floor. And that time was the one time they did. And I thought they captured, some beautiful set design, which was like, okay, show me some other parts of the set that I haven't seen.
That's a really good point. Because Deep Space Nine did such a great job, and Voyager later as well, at making the station and the ship a character. That is another character. And Deep Space Nine, we could get a feel of the station in every scene. In Ops, it felt like a character. In Odo's office, it felt like a character, very much so. Whereas Next Generation, at least the first two seasons, not really. It's just, it's just walls and panels and whatever. So that's a really good point that this time they're giving, this railing, this banister, a beauty shot kind of. And who knows, maybe it's because they improved it and they wanted to show it off. Maybe they revamped everything and they wanted to show it off. Or maybe that's another Rick Berman thing, or maybe that's a DP thing where they're like, let's increase the lighting, increase the color. Let's really show off this set. We've got all this stuff. Let's use it. Let's make it look amazing.
And they did. There was a moment when, for example, they showed off all of Wesley's kind of stuff that he had on his desk, screen graphics and all of these gifts that they have, screensavers that they've used throughout the years. They also did it on Geordi's when he was working with some paneling. They did a lot of close-up work on what he was working on the panel. So they were featuring the set, that little microscope, little gizmo that Wesley was using. They did a lot of set design for this. There was also that ship, the little egg launch thing that they built, which was a cool design probe looking
Yeah.
craft type of thing.
And Shuttle Bay 2 that they were in looked amazing too. Like
Yes, I,
these sets are looking pretty good.
I thought so. And I also thought when I heard um, LeVar Burton doing the tech stuff at some point, I was like, every time I hear him saying tech stuff, I think of you saying that he's the best at saying tech. And
Yeah.
I thought it again today because he just rattles this stuff off like it's so like it's second nature to him, and it sounds like he knows what the hell he's talking about. And I know he for a fact he does. Nobody can know what he's talking about. It's like you'd have to be
These aren't
a
real
physicist.
words.
These are not real words,
Mhm.
but he just rattles the stuff off so matter of fact, and he explaining to Wesley, Wes, we have to find this and that. I can't even duplicate it. If I had it written down, I
Yeah.
couldn't put the same inflections in my voice that he does. That is so casual. Even if I was reading it in front of you, that's how good he is at that.
hmm yeah, absolutely. I still have not seen anybody say technobabble or treknobabble as well as LeVar Burton because, it's one thing to memorize the lines. It's another thing to pronounce these made up words correctly. It's another thing to pronounce these difficult real life words correctly. It's another thing to know what they mean or what they're supposed to mean. But then on top of all that, he conveys a comfort with the words that's also very difficult when it's not unlike when people are speaking a made up fake different language. Like if they're speaking Klingon, but they're saying it as if there's feeling behind it and they know what they're saying and there's inflection behind certain things. It's very difficult. Same thing as what he's doing here is because we don't just say things, we speed up and slow down and add emphasis to certain words and he's
Yeah.
doing that as if he has the full grasp and comfort with what he's saying, and it's very difficult to do with made up words.
I mean, it's amazing. And he's so good at it. The other thing that I thought was um, a negative on me for this episode, one of the things I did not like, and that was the uniforms. I felt like the uniforms had more padding in them, particularly when I looked at Picard's shoulders during the scene with Dr. Crusher. It felt like he was wearing like a muscle padded, superhero padding type
You know,
underneath his
I
costume.
didn't notice that, but it would make sense because again, 1989, they're souping everything up. They're making things more colorful. Troy's got lipstick that pops. The ship looks beautiful. The inside of the ship. Maybe they're like, all right, Captain, time to not,
Shoulder
you're
pads.
49. Let's make you look like a football player. But look,
Yeah,
1989, everybody was wearing those shoulder pads, right? So they're
yeah.
probably just, yeah, I'm sure you're probably right that they really added those things and try to make
Because
everybody
I
look a little
know I
better.
know Patrick Stewart's not built the way he looked in those shots. He looked extra puffed up, muscular. They showed like these, there were creases in his uniform that I don't remember seeing just, the last episode before. They definitely enhanced the padding inside of his uniform or underneath it.
No, you got to be right. That's true. And uh, same with when you were mentioning Crusher's uh, whatever that is, her jacket. It also
Yeah,
has a little extra thing. That's just kind of how people wore things back then. I'm glad we don't
yeah,
anymore because it's so weird when you see it nowadays. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I didn't catch that. That's a good one though. I mean, I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure that's right.
Yeah, it has to be something in there. Oh, I also want to give a big shout out. Well, first of all, I have to say this. Michael Pillar and his love for baseball.
Yep.
Once again, she shines, right?
It
Once
shows up
again,
on day one, doesn't it?
on day one, no, no matter what, too. And the emissary, it showed up in day one because
You're
I
so
think
right.
one of the prophet
Yep.
was in a baseball, right? Was wearing I was one of them wearing the catcher's outfit. But so he has to insert base. He loves baseball so much that he has to insert it from day one. It just pops its head right away. The whole baseball references. And it makes me think Michael Piller was the original Moneyball before Moneyball because the way he has analytics and the way he thinks of it, like being able to play out a game in his head because of box scores and knowing what happened in different innings. Um, that's how that to me reminds me of a chess player calling out moves and not actually having a board in front of them, but knowing where the pieces are in their mind, which there are
Mhm.
people that can do that.
I can.
Which also it also brought me back to the computer, which was Majel saying those chess moves when the computer was malfunctioning, right?
Right.
She king to knight, this that, and all of these kind of moves. So Michael Pillar's love of baseball right away inserted into the first episode that he's involved with, which I thought, how cool is that? Just it's he stays consistent. And also wanted to say that data as an interface for these nanites,
Hmm.
um, when his acting, now he's playing. This is like 4D chess for an actor. He's this is a guy playing a robot who wants to be human, being an interface for a nanotechnology that wants to
Communicate
itself
to
evolve
humans, and also
and
that's trying to
communicate.
talk, yeah, to
Yeah.
humans.
So this performance is so deep for him to get into. I was watching him as he was kind of looking around at the people that he always works with, right? Uh, and pretending as if, like this is his first experience in a body in this form and being able to see, and all of these things. And I just thought this dude is amazing. Brent Spiner he's an amazing actor. And watching
Yeah.
him do that scene, I loved just that. It was just the first 10, 15 seconds of it, but he's just kind of, he has that look on his face where, oh, they've taken over my circuitry, right? Or
Even
whatever it
changed
is,
his
right?
voice for it. Yeah.
It
He-
was amazing. And his
yeah.
body movements, everything. He was really looking like uh, a baby being born into a big cyborg body. It was kind of amazing.
Also when you were talking about baseball, there was something interesting to that when they mentioned the Dr. Stubbs said, it was abandoned by a society of fast food and fast games, lost to impatience. But I've seen the great players make the great plays, which, by the way, I thought that I was like, no, you didn't. You imagined it. But I did think it was interesting that in 1989, the line was abandoned by a society of fast food and fast games. Now, remember, in 89, baseball was still America's pastime. And now it's third, you know. It was number
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Now it's
yeah,
it's third. I mean, football's got to be king. I think
yeah.
basketball has been, and why? Because they're they're faster. There's more action, and over the last couple decades, baseball has tried to speed up the game. Like they've tried to speed up, the amount of time between pitches, the amount of time
Hmm.
between at bats. The seventh inning stretch, shortening that. Like they've tried because it used to be a game that was like 3 to 3.5 hours. Now it's like 2:45 or something like that. But he was definitely ahead of his time when he mentioned that because yes, they were losing an audience after this, and they were losing it because there are faster, more exciting games being played in different sports. So it's really interesting that he was able to catch on to that and write some lines from the future that would say that baseball was lost because we were more interested in faster paced sports. I just thought that was really smart of him to mention that.
Yeah, there's foresight there. There was other foresight too that I thought was pretty ahead of its time. Just the conversation and the main topic of this episode being nanotechnology able to enter living cells and conduct repairs. I mean, that is essentially the basis of mRNA technology that, is being used. That is used right now. And so, uh,
Yeah.
again, this is conceptually something that has become very real in our daily lives. And for them to be talking about nanotechnology and self-replicating machinery that has a collective intelligence, these are all real life um, things that are being worked on, developed, that are already in the marketplace. Um,
Hmm.
there's been all kinds of articles written about different kinds of nanotechnology, including like um, mosquitoes that are actually robotic, uh, kind of nanotechnology that are able to deliver other kinds of things besides
I
infection.
can't wait till we have fake flies flying around and having video cameras, or like the people that say all birds are fake. Birds are just like drones or something like that. But pretty soon we're gonna have like fake mosquito. Well, not mosquitoes because we'll try to kill them. Make it like a fake ladybug. People don't try to kill ladybugs, so they should put cameras in fake ladybugs because everybody's happy when the ladybug lands on their arm. They just look like,
Yeah, it's good
oh,
luck.
they're like,
Good
hey,
luck.
how's it going? So I just wanted to point out real quick too, there were actually a lot of lines that made me laugh. Number one was when they lost, the power on the bridge, and Picard says, "Number one, the bridge, such as it is yours," which I just thought it was funny because he's like,
Yeah.
even though there's nothing to do here. And then the other one was when they were talking in the conference room, and the doctor goes, Dr. Stubbs goes, "My dear Captain," and Picard goes, he just put his hand up and then he just gives his order. He's like, "We're gonna do this, and he was like, I'm done hearing from you. I know what you're gonna say. I get it. Here's my hand." He didn't say shut up or quiet down or excuse me, sir. He just put his hand up. That's all. Thank you very much. So
Yeah, talk to the hand.
we're just about out of time here already. Wow, that was a lot to say here, but we'll cover a lot more on
Yeah.
the free for all, everybody. We got way more to say here. And on our way out, we'd love to give a very special thanks to some of our great friends like Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey, Bill Victor Arucan,
You can.
Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, on a post, Anil O. Polat, our pal Justine Norton-Kertson, uh, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dequeue, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, my live from Tokyo, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, good old Jane Jorgensen, our buddy, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manisfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom, Jed Thompson, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason Okun. Thank you all very much. Stick around. We've got a lot more. Oh, shoot. We have 5 seconds to. Whoa, who's the home run of the day?
Oh, home run of the day, home run of the day. Michael Pillar. I'm going to give it up to Michael Pillar. That's
Totally
it.
agree. Michael Pillar nailed it. Welcome to the team, Michael Pillar. It's like we got a new manager, baseball manager, that's going to bring your
Yeah.
500 team to the World Series. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule. This is the frickin' free for all. Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Melissa Longo is here today. So is Dr. Susan V. Gruner. We've got Jason Okun, Allyson Leach-Heid. Mai is live in Tokyo. We've got Shag 840, of course, everybody knows. We've got Chris McGee, Faith Howell, Marcia Classic Schreier is here. So is Greg Kenzo, Carrie Schwent hanging out with us, Mr. V. Matt Boardman, and Anil O. Polat. First things first, this is where stuff gets real.
Wait, what? That's not Shag 840. I'm Shag 840. This is an imposter.
No, believe nothing he says. He just came in here. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know
what that other guy's talking about. Yeah,
I don't know who your
I'm
friend
a real
is,
Shag
but
420.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Shag 420. Who are you?
Shag 840, get your name right.
Shag 420?
Shag 420.
Yeah, I don't know what
Double D.
I don't know what that is.
This is bullshit.
Shaggy wasn't me.
Which
guy's
one
half
is
the man.
which? One has a hat, but they both have a hat on.
I don't.
They
I
both
don't
have the
believe this
beard.
happened.
Okay.
That's
Ryan,
Shag
you look
840.
confused.
I don't see it.
Ryan, you look confused. Is this
No,
okay?
that's you. That's
I
Thank
think
you.
you guys should
I don't
just
know who the
share
other
the
guy
name.
is.
Thank you. Bonafide.
All right, so let's get up into
Identical
this,
twins.
everybody. First things
Happy birthday
first.
to me. That was my birthday present.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Dave Gregory, and thank you all of you for the assistance on that. That was awesome.
Right now, everybody that's listening in, they're going like, I don't get it. What happened? It must have been funny. It was.
We do look a lot alike.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say identical twins.
I see
Well,
it.
first things first, everybody. Here's the big thing right here. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Put me on the spot for this one. I'll give it a 7-2. I'll give it a 7.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know? That includes both Shag 840s.
6.7.
6.4.
It's getting
7-1.
lower.
7.5.
7.5. All right. All bets are in. It looks like on IMDb today, the voters gave it a 6.5.
Ooh.
I know, kind of
That's
rude.
cold.
Sound like Kevin Eubanks. Remember he used to always say that's cold, Jay. Anybody catch the non-appearance mention today?
Yeah. Wesley's dad.
Jack Crusher. Anybody else?
His father's son.
Oh, okay. All right, Melissa Longo, please get us started on the right track. What did you think of the first episode of season 3?
It was interesting. I got a different feel from this first episode than I have in the previous seasons. Visually, for one, it felt like I was watching kind of a different show. It felt more like I was on a spaceship rather than being on a soundstage or being on a set. I don't know if they added a hum to the ship or what have you, but it felt more immersive into this universe than we've previously seen before. And maybe that's my imagination, but yeah. I also think it's interesting that with the addition of Michael Piller in the writer's room, we get the addition of baseball in Star Trek. And that's so awesome. It's great to see his influence of that in Star Trek. I also feel like that there is more of a cohesion with the crew in this episode than maybe we've seen previously. It feels like they're working as a team, and as a team, they're trying to find a solution to this problem. So everybody is part of that solution. And they're not necessarily relying on a hero to solve this problem that's going on with the ship, which I think is where Stubbs comes in and is important because he's the anomaly. He is looking to be the hero rather than working as a team to solve this problem to this solution. So that was pretty evident to me. I also like the fact that they didn't gloss over the reunion of Wesley and Beverly, that it would be an easy transition to come back to. I like that they kind of dealt with that. Although I do wish that they had mentioned Pulaski and her exit, because she was such an important part of season 2, and I really enjoyed her growth. Overall, it was a pretty decent start, and it feels like I don't know, it feels like they're getting their legs in there. I don't know, they've got their sea legs now. So space legs.
Yeah.
Space legs.
Great stuff, Melissa. Wow, you're really echoing a lot of stuff Cirroc was saying earlier, and myself as well. Good stuff.
You're right.
Thank you very much.
And,
yes.
Sorry, one last thing. Guinan, always Guinan. We love Guinan. Okay, that's all.
Good point. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here. What's up, Sue? What do you think of this one?
Well, I didn't dislike it. I think it deserved higher than what was it, a 6.5? No, it deserved a 7 point something. I agree completely with Melissa. There is a completely different look of the ship, the sounds, everything. And I didn't think it was that bad. The nanobots is relevant today. I won't go into great detail about it, but there's people who are working on that kind of thing. And I love that Dr. Crusher was back. Didn't like that we didn't get to say goodbye to Pulaski, but I thought it was a good episode, very sci-fi. And like I said, I think I would give it between a 7.5 and an 8. Much better than a 6.5.
Tell them. Thank you very much,
And
Dr.
Guinan,
Sue.
of course. Yeah, Guinan, definitely.
And Dr. Stubbs, right? No.
You know what it reminded me of? Can I add this very quickly? I was just Googling it to see what the episode was. It reminded me a little bit of the Deep Space Nine episode.
Yeah.
Second Sight or
Second
Lady
Sight.
the red dress?
Yeah.
It reminded me of a little bit of that.
Second Sight with Fenna and the guy
Yes.
who's birthing a star.
Right.
Wait. The guy who's birthing a star?
Yeah. Mhm.
That was off camera. Didn't pass
All right.
the sensors.
Fall through a garden hose.
Excellent stuff. Thanks very much, everybody. Jason Okun is here. What's up, Jason? What'd you think of this episode?
Well, as I think everybody noticed, there's definite sort of new feel and look for the show. I mean, obviously having a new DP may have something to do with it.
Marvin Rush, right? That's right.
The fact that they've changed the uniforms, and they'll change a little bit over the course of the third season, some more. So that gives it a different look for sure. And the fact that Michael Piller came in and basically worked on this script makes a hell of a lot of difference. This sort of a kind of a transition period. I guess, Hurley left, and then Michael Wagner was there for a cup of coffee, and then he left. So this, I think, was partly his baby. So it's a little bit of a mishmash of things. But, several things are happening. Number one is certainly the character is a little bit more fleshed out and real. I think the dialogue is very, very sharp. I think some of the things that contributed maybe to the lower score was that, I mean, yes, it was filmed second and probably intended to be aired first anyway, because of the thematics. But you kind of kick off the season with something that looks almost like a bottle show with very few things happening. So it's not really a big thing to kick off a season. So that may have had an effect on the rating itself. But I think, again, the dialogue is sharp. But there are a few things I'll save for later. Certain things were removed from the episode for whatever reason. But, maybe for the better rather than for the worse based on what was in the script. But it's certainly a good beginning. And it gives you a feeling that you're actually watching a cohesive show. You're getting the characters that you like to watch from week to week. And frankly, the things we're going to get used to over the coming years.
Yeah, there were apparently a ton of scenes that got cut out of this episode. And we actually have not covered that, so we'll definitely cover that a little later. But here's a hint. There's somebody that stars in another sci-fi show that was featured in it.
Oh, yes.
Look at this. This
Scott
is the
Grimes.
guy. Yeah. of the Orville.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jason M. Okun. Allyson Leach-Heid, how are you today? What do you think of this one?
I'm good, thank you. I like the episode. It's sweet. I like starting the season with Wesley and Beverly, getting them back together. And I love Beverly going around to all of the adults and go, tell me about him. Like, what has he been like this last year while I've been gone? And so, talking to Picard about it. And of course, Picard goes into like his service record. She's like, no, I want to know about him, who he is. So I loved that. And the scene with Beverly and Guinan at the end is so sweet and one of my favorites. So I like those two playing together. Excited to have Beverly back. Sad we didn't say goodbye to Pulaski. And the Elcar game was on point in this episode. I loved all the explosions and in the computer core. Those Elcars were amazing. So visually fun to see. So I like the episode. Oh, and it reminds me a lot of Home Soil. If we're going to throw what episodes it reminds you of.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Home Soil.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Allyson. Mai is live in Tokyo, if you can believe that. Cool sweater. What'd you think of this episode?
I thought it was a very motivational episode. I liked it. Picard refers to the evolving intelligence of the nanites, but I think maybe a better choice would be sentience, which includes the ability to acquire and apply knowledge. But it also goes on to address the capacity to feel and have subjective experiences. So, based on all of this, we could maybe say that they'd achieved consciousness, even, which was interesting. Look at the evidence. The nanites feeling anger and hurt at being attacked, and then subsequently considering their possible reactions to attack doctors, the way they attacked Dr. Stubbs later on. I mean, it raised the question for me of what is this episode really trying to tell us? Because I think the episodes of Star Trek, for me, one of the things I've always liked about all the seasons, there seems to be some kind of message there. And today, looking at this, or yesterday looking at this again, I thought the title on the face of it seems to be addressing the emerging consciousness of the nanites, sure, but I think there's more to it. I think the message is that we need to learn to accept and interact with communities who have heretofore been either actively or passively ignored. Recall, this is 1989, and Star Trek had the sheer nads to put this out there. 1989 was a huge year. For me, it was a huge year. It was the year I decided to start living my life as myself, my best life. And Star Trek didn't influence this really, but I recall the utter fear that I felt due to the environment of the time. But Star Trek didn't shy away from tough messages. So I decided that neither would I. I mean, look, for example, at today's society's recognition, acceptance, and in fact, clear incorporation of the non-binary community. It wasn't even an identified thing for a long time. And then as a society, we started looking at life with our own 1,000 times magnification microscope and discovered an identifiable group of like-minded individuals. And within, 2 decades, that identification has morphed into utter acceptance. And that's become part of the fabric of many societies around the world. So this kind of evolution happens. This guy wrote about it, but evolution happens. It's happening right before our eyes and in our lifetimes. I doff my cap to Star Trek for putting this out there in the late 80s. Bravo.
Mm-hmm. Evolution. Good title. Good stuff there. Thank you very much. Also, by the way, Allison's got a great shirt. We forgot to point out. Look at that. You could get that at bekindmerch.org. Looks like it's the Kenneth Mitchell variety. That's Chase Masterson's organization. Thank you, Allyson. Happy birthday, Justin Weir, a.k.a. Shag840. What is up? What do you think of this episode?
Hey, guys. All right, so I went into this episode thinking I skipped this one. I don't normally like it, but I watched it with the imposter over there. And
Dave Gregory, that everybody loves, by the way. It actually is
Yay.
Dave Gregory.
Yeah, it was better than I remembered. We got Bob Kelso from Scrubs, which great show.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite parts, and I didn't realize it at the time until now, physical acting. Wesley doing that little thing on the table demonstrating. Especially for a child actor. Like, is that for weed? Oh, sorry. Anyways. So when we see the ship like trip out, like the doors are going down, the music's blaring, that's scary. That's computer for the ship. If computers on like a real day for like AI, that's scary. That can happen. That was my only thought for this episode. I also thought that Brent Spiner doing that voice when that species was inside him. Oh, Brent Spiner is so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to keep it short because it's been 5 o'clock today because it's my birthday. So thank you.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere when it's your birthday. Thank you very much, Shag 840, aka Justin Weir, and his pal and our pal, Dave Gregory. Chris McGee is here. He's the Dark Lord. He's about to drop some knowledge on us. What's up, Chris?
Oh boy. So evolution, I have to echo what everyone else has pretty much already seen, and that there's just something new and fresh about this episode when it first comes on. You can tell there's a whole different vibe now. And I think the title of the episode is adequate for that, appropriate rather, because it is an evolution of the show, not just of the nanites in the episode. New uniforms has been already identified, new soundtrack, great one by Ron Jones, new intro sequence, during the credits, and of course a new, original Doctor to replace Pulaski. Although, speaking of the uniforms, there was still that one helmsman that Wesley relieves at the beginning. It still had the old season 1 and 2 uniform on. This episode probably is the one that starts the whole visiting scientist is impatient and will do anything to carry out his experiment trope. Definitely an example of the Federation representative causing problems for the crew trope, that was popularized in the original series more often than it probably should have been. I'm not a very good, I can't really tell between a good actor and a great actor. So I'm just still learning that, but I can't be sure, but I think you can actually see the pain on Dr. Crusher's face when Wesley snaps at her saying, how can you know you haven't even been here? And she pauses for a moment and you can just see her feeling the anger and just choking it down and saying, well, I'm here now. And I thought that was just wonderfully done. Regarding all these malfunctions on the ship, I'm just waiting for Geordi to get thrown around a turbolift again. This episode does give us the first some kind of the season, which is spoken by Jordan. I don't know if it was mentioned in an earlier segment when he said it's definitely some kind of continuing disintegration. As for the memorable quote, kind of an odd one, but what can I say? I remember it so clearly after all these years, which is Picard saying, "The bridge, such as it is yours."
Yeah, that was funny. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Chris McGee. Faith Howell, what is up, Faith? How are you? What'd you think of this one?
Well, I remember this episode fondly overall. Nanites and Wesley Crusher in general just seems like as a kid, I was into that. However, when I went to do my homework this week, I definitely was channeling Wesley Crusher and fell asleep on the couch. And so, whoops. Thankfully, I did not evolve my homework into a new species, so that's good. I also was thinking, obviously with Dr. Crusher back, Worf is not tucking Wesley into bed anymore. So maybe if he had, transitioned back Mom into her role, this would not have happened. So really the villain here is Worf. Where's he at? Yeah, so
one job.
Right. Yeah, so basically all I got in my notes before I fell asleep was Dr. Stubbs, what a jerk. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
That sounds like a country song title.
Right?
Uh, Marcia, classic Schreier. What is up, Marcia? Good to see you. What did you think of this episode?
So, like everybody else, I noticed all the changes, new uniforms, and etc. I even noticed a new acting style. I mean, it's so much less robotic than it's been in the first two seasons, and it was very real feeling to me. And it had to do with the writing. I believe this is Michael Pillar's first episode that he wrote, and it's so obvious that it's real. You know, the argument between Wesley and Dr. Crusher, and the discussion between Crusher and Guinan at the end, as was saying. It's just, those are things that actual people might have said, you know? So I liked that a lot. And I sense a better understanding of how to write for women. Even Troy with her psychoanalysis was a little more real. That's the only word that keeps coming to my mind, real. I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said. The nanites, if it's okay to mention another sci-fi show, reminded me of the replicators on Stargate SG-1, like 10, 15 years later. I mean, and they evolved into human form. So it would be interesting to go back to this planet where they left all the nanites and see what became of them a few years later. And the thing that it made me laugh was the scene where the nanites were getting back at the crew by creating toxins on the bridge, and the bridge crew is just sitting there. They don't even notify anybody that this is going on. And it takes Picard and Riker to come in from the other room where they smell something. You know, it's sort of like, you know, when you leave the gas on and you send something from another room, when somebody is in the kitchen, just like inhaling all this, why did they do something? So that sort of bothered me. But,
isn't a mask supposed to drop down from the ceiling?
Yes,
and you put yours
from the
on
ceiling,
before you
so
help
have
somebody
something
else?
to breathe, yeah. And then the computer's going crazy. Worf and LaForge go to engineering to see if they can fix it. Picard, Data, and Riker leave the bridge to go have a meeting. So who was in charge at that point? Might have been Wesley.
Oh, God.
I know, right? At least he doesn't completely solve the problem in the very end. So that's changing as well. Again, more real. That's it.
Definitely felt like it. Yeah. More realism, more realistic relationships and speech and acting and behavior. Yeah. Gregory Kenzo is here. He is the realist of the real, wearing an awesome emissary shirt. What do you think of this episode?
I thought it was great. I like the ideas behind it. It's very sci-fi in its premise. But you can also, to reiterate what everybody else said, you could see the new director of photography. I think the writing was different. Was there a different director than the
Colby?
past?
We've had him before a couple of times, I think.
Colby,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it just seemed like a slower paced, or just like a different pace. Like, you could tell it was more character focused because the first shot, I believe it was like a pan up onto Wesley sleeping, right? Which is like kind of giving you the hint that it's going to be a Wesley episode with his experiments, right? And then I also like the tag at the end that Dr. or Beverly Crusher does in 10 Forward, where like they kind of end it like on a joke. She's like, "Oh, I'm so glad he's hanging out with a beautiful girl," and like, who is she? And, you know,
yeah.
You watched it. It was great. Yeah, the pacing felt like they built up to like the conflict, and then they kind of switched gears. Like, okay, it's not going to be about them doing this experiment. It's going to be about them doing this over here, with the Borg babies. No, they're not Borg babies, but I was going to say that Wesley kind of created the Borg here, or at least a type of Borg. Because this is what Borg are, right? They're cybernetic, biological. Well, they have sentience. They're sentient AI, right?
Yep.
And yeah, this is one that I would like to see kind of come back, revisit that planet that has all these nano, or what are they called? Nanites?
Nanites.
And see what happened to them. But other than that, I have a couple of different philosophies of the episode. The one is straightforward. You will never come up against a greater adversary than your own potential, my young friend. That's great. But I also liked when Dr. Kelso, or Dr. Stubbs, he said, a good try, counselor, but sometimes when you reach beneath a man's self-portrait, deep down inside what you find is nothing at all. And I that sounds more like nihilistic than it can come off. I think it's important that like your self-image is a lot of the times, the most important thing, because although it's not exactly who you are, because it's also how other people interact with you, that is kind of who you are, I would say. But the most important thing is your self-image kind of is what essentially you are, right? If anything else, we are who we think we are. I don't know. Yeah, that's why philosophy doesn't really make sense. Okay, that's it.
Great
Thanks,
stuff.
everybody.
Reminds me of Dennis Green, the old Vikings coach. Remember? Well, no, I think it was the Cardinals at the time when he says, they are who we thought they were. Thanks very much, Greg Kenzo. Carrie Schwent, what's up? How are you? What'd you think of this one?
I like this one. Haven't seen it in a really long time, but I very much enjoy it and got a couple of deep thoughts, and of course the limerick. But first, the prop of the egg, Dr. Stubbs's egg, is a reused prop from the season 2 premiere, The Child. It was that apparatus that held all the sample containers, but laid on its side. I read that on IMDb, and then when I went back to rewatch it to take my notes, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why. I had a feeling that it felt familiar, but I thought that was very cool. And Riker, stop pointing at Wesley and directing him. What the heck was that about? You haven't done that in a long time.
I loved it.
Hope we don't ever see it again.
He was calling him out. You late.
Yeah.
You in trouble.
This is very true, and I have it on good authority by my better half that it is in fact possible to snore with your mouth closed. I wasn't sure about that, and he told me, yeah, it is. And I've got some questions about Guinan, but we'll save that for later. We'll save that for later. But my brought up the evolution with some people's journeys, but I also think it applies to Wesley and Dr. Crusher's parental relationship too, because when you live apart from your child for an extended period of time, when you're back together again, the relationship is going to be very different. You're going to notice things about your kid that you hadn't noticed before, and they definitely grow like a weed at about the head age. So I can definitely relate to that. And that argument that they had, it was very, very familiar. Had many like that. And watching the face acting of Gates McFadden in that argument. Yeah, I've lived lived through all of those emotions, and usually within a very short period of time, just like that argument. I very much related to that in a way that I don't think I had the last time I saw it, way back. And yes, I loved Wil Wheaton's acting in this so much. You could definitely see he has grown up a little bit more. Loving the new hairdo. Probably took at least a half an hour to get his hair that high. I have a little bit of a question about the back of his pants when he was in the computer core. There's that weird sort of V in the back. Not sure what that's about, but I liked just how his own way of doing things also kind of evolved, because he realized he screwed up, did a little bit of checking on his own to make sure he was right about if it was him, and then he went and asked for help, and they got help figuring it out. And I don't know if anybody else, perhaps Allyson might have noticed, but when she mentioned home soil, I absolutely expected Data when the nanites started talking through him, for him to call them ugly bags of mostly water. And they came kind of close when nanite Data said that they looked kind of strange. A little bit of deja vu there, but in a good way, because I love Brent Spiner to death. But to finish up, the limerick for the day is parts kind of summary of Wesley in the episode and kind of part advice. Here we go. It's hard admitting mistakes that you make, especially when the ship is at stake. You try to fix it yourself, but then admit you need help. Once things are sorted, it's time for a break. And he got to go out on a date after all of that was done, walking in with his arm around the girl's waist. Yeah, I was right there with Beverly. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, he's having fun. Who's the girl? Spill the tea. She was very pretty.
Which is part of this huge amount of clips that they cut out. That was kind of like the closure of that entire storyline that disappeared. Thanks very much, Carrie. Great stuff. Anil O. Polat is here. What is up, Anil? What are your thoughts on this episode?
I think, like you said, cutting out of scenes, I think the story is a little bit clunky, like the way it goes, but it's made better from a lot of stuff. But mostly, one is the look. Like, it just, again, feels very immersive. And two is all the character moments, right? Like all the family moments you notice, I guess, from Michael Piller, and you see kind of how Deep Space Nine took off. So even if the story isn't the best or the plot isn't the best executed, because you care about the characters or what's going on, that pulls you into the episode. And that kind of happened here. So I like the fact that there was the focus on the family. I really like those scenes between the Crushers. I think they were really good. They were very realistic. And again, makes you like Wesley more, even though he had a kind of rocky start in the first seasons or people didn't like him so much. But I think this really gives him, a lot more perspective. Like he has all this responsibility, but he's so young, and there's this weird sort of pressure on him. So I think that makes the episode sort of punch above its weight. And I like the concept of the nanites. I think that was really cool. And again, sort of very, for 1993 or 2 or whenever this was, a pretty, advanced concept, pretty new. So I think that was a pretty good sci-fi angle. So
excellent. Thank you so much, Anil O. Polat. Of course, we've got the Matt Boardman with his favorite Quarks shirt. What's up, the Matt?
Hey. So this episode reminded me of there's a line that Sisko has at the end of in the cards, and he talks about how he can't explain it, but there's something that has changed, like a breeze, fresh air has come through the station, and everybody feels different, and that makes me think of this episode, because it really, as everybody's described there, it almost feels like a completely different show from a production standpoint, from an acting standpoint, from the way that it looks, the way that it sounds, and as discussed over in the chat, apparently in the way that it smells, because Wesley didn't take a shower before he hit the bridge. But it made me think of War of the Worlds, and the reason it made me think of War of the Worlds was because the ultimate demise of the invaders that came was microscopic organisms that they were not adapted to, right? And they ended up getting sick and dying because of that. And it just this made me think of that, because it's like, here we have the Enterprise, and it's infected by something in which they couldn't see initially. And so that, and in some ways that kind of freaks me out, because there's, we have biological things, and I mean, we get sick and things like that. And it kind of goes to show how small things have great power. And I think about that too, that in a way that's kind of like this new season that we have, this new approach that we have. There are a lot of little tiny changes that happened that as a whole have a big impact, not only on the next generation, but resonate on down through the other series that will come after this. So I absolutely love it. I love the production changes, and I don't know if anybody noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, but among the changes too is that Geordi is promoted to a full lieutenant, and Worf is now a lieutenant commander. And
Worf was no. I think Geordi was lieutenant commander. I think Worf is still lieutenant.
Is it the other way? Okay, yeah. Okay, maybe it's the other way around. But I just noticed that there was that. And then the other thing, small thing, in talking about small things and just everybody contributed, I don't know why this made me laugh, but I found it very significant, is that at the end there, when Guinan walks up to Beverly and as they're getting ready to talk about Wesley, she takes Beverly's drink and puts it on a coaster, and I was like, that is such a bartender move.
Yes.
But I love it, because it's one of those little tiny subtle things. We talked about, others have talked about how this just seemed more real. That is something that would happen in real life, and I don't know, I love it. I love the new direction that everything is going to go in from this point forward.
Good eye, Matt. Thanks very much. Cirroc Lofton, any final thoughts on this first episode of season 3?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. One, I want to give credit to Michael Piller for merging the A and B storyline. I never expected them to merge at some point, and they did merge the two, with the nanites kind of going to that planet on that probe or whatever. So it wasn't something that was that predictable for me while I was watching it. I thought it was a good merge. The other thing is, I really love Dr. Crusher's lab coat, or whatever that is that she wears. It's kind of her own thing, which is a stylistic kind of personal thing. You see that Pulaski was wearing the traditional medical kind of colors, a Starfleet uniform, and she comes in with her own pizzazz, with her own coat, with the collar up, and just that's how she wants to look. And I like that you're able to express yourself in kind of a personal way, even though, still performing your duties on a Starfleet ship. So I thought that was a nice little personal touch that makes her kind of stand out to me when I watch her. The other thing I thought was cool was that they mentioned Africa. They mentioned Dakar, Senegal. And I thought, well, we're, shout out to Africa being the home base for, computer chip manufacturing in the future. At least, I think Taiwan has that moniker now, but who knows? And so I just thought that was a good little plug for Africa. And also, there was a moment there when they were discussing this nanotechnology and its evolution. And I thought at that point would have been a good time to bring up the Prime Directive, because they're now essentially meeting a new life form, and there are certain protocols for engaging new life form with the Prime Directive and their ability to have warp capabilities, if I'm not mistaken, right? Would they consider that the ship being overtaken by this, would that be their evolution into warp capabilities because they have essentially seized this ship? Would have been a good philosophical question for them to debate in that conference room with the Dr. Stubb and Picard. I felt like they were on opposite ends of that argument. Felt like Dr. Stubbs was like, yeah, just eliminate them. They're robots. We can kill them. And it felt like Picard was saying, no, this is life form, and we're going to have the level of diplomacy and preserving life and communications, and those kinds of priorities were there. So I would have liked a little bit more expansion on that debate on why you would approach it in one way versus the other. It's kind of a good philosophical debate about how you would respect some kind of artificial intelligence and would you deal with it and, like, hey, just pull the plug on it, or would you try to, negotiate and have a conversation? And so I thought that was a good, just philosophical debate that could have been expanded upon. And then the last thing I will say for my alternative episode title would be Nanite Visitor.
Yes.
Hey.
That's all I can say.
Good.
Awesome.
Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Yeah. All right, that's it for us, everybody. Thank you to Anil O, Polat, Matt Boardman, Carrie Schwent, Greg Kenzo, Marsha Classic Schreier, Faith Howell, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, and of course, Dave Gregory. My Live in Tokyo, Allyson Leach-Heid, Jason Okun, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, for myself, Cirroc Lofton, Melissa Longo, Aaron Eisenberg, and Nanite Visitor. Thank you all very much for joining us. Until next time, always remember the seventh rule.